So we have another very special occasion. Um, we have another inaugural lecture. So we've had quite a few of these recently. It's wonderful that we have another one, and we have again, a wonderful person joining our department, Marion Schmidt. I'm sure many of you have had a chance to meet. So Marion comes from Rotterdam and is working at Erasmus MC, where she's the chair of neuroradiology and is professor of neuroradiology in addition. And somehow we managed to tempt her to come here for 1 week every month. So we're very pleased that you agreed to come. I won't go through all of your CV, mostly because it's very, very long. But also, I think you're going to go through some of it, I hope yourself, but just a few highlights. Marion's been very heavily involved in the ESR and ESMRB, where she's been president in the past, for example. So she really is a stellar radiologist, internationally known for her work, and we are very proud that you've come to join us. So we're all looking forward to what Radiology Unlimited is. But beforehand, there's some cheese. So if now's your chance to grab some cheese, maybe we'll pass around the plates of
Yeah.
cheese while you start, because otherwise they might disappear. So a taste of Rotterdam, is
Of
that?
Rotterdam, or nearby. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a nearby village of Rotterdam. This is the stuff you can't get, anywhere else. Thank you so much, Frodia, for the very well, I always feel a bit embarrassed introduction. Don't worry, I'm not going to go through my CV. I'll show indeed some stuff of what I've done, but mostly I hope I can inspire you a little bit and in our work. Now let's see if I can move the slides forward. Yeah, so with this Radiology Unlimited, what I really want to show you and inspire you to is that we as academics and as healthcare professionals, we basically hold the world in our hands, and that gives us a lot of opportunities, but I think also a lot of responsibilities, so that our work, especially our findings from our research, really make it to the people that need it, wherever they are in the world, that we can get, that highly expert knowledge everywhere. And of course, that we also take care of our beautiful planet a little bit as well for our generations to come. So yes, as Freddie has said, I primarily live in and work live in Rotterdam with Peter, who's here on the first row and was the cheese bearer. And now, indeed, since the beginning of this year, I am now part-time here in Cambridge. Different kind of river, different kind of bridge. I think it's very, very complementary in its architecture. And yeah, I'm here 1 week per month. Physically, I take the train, so hopefully not polluting the planet too much. And I'd really like to take this opportunity to thank Fiona and specifically also Ferdia for, when we talked about this crazy idea about 3 years ago of doing this joint position, to take that further and to actually make that happen. It's a bit of a crazy idea, but it shows us already a bit of Radiology Unlimited, not limited by disciplines, by institutions or by countries. And I also want to thank my head of department in Rotterdam, Els van der Lucht, who also has been very supportive of this and letting me go a little bit to make this happen. Um, so I'm not originally from Rotterdam. I've lived there for a very long time, and if you've lived in Rotterdam for more than a day, you're a Rotterdammer, so that's very good. But I was actually originally, I was born in Tanzania, in a tiny little village in the south in the mountains, and these are my parents. Apparently, they couldn't both face the camera at the same time, holding me. So I've got two pictures. And under the palm tree, this is me a couple of days old, and well, on the right-hand picture, obviously a bit older. And they were there, had gone out there to basically run a local hospital for a charity organization. And I think that their sort of humanitarian and adventurous spirit is something that has really played a very big role in my upbringing and later my brothers and sisters as well. Africa has always been very important in our household, and is central for the the way I try to live my life and do my work. It's always been drilled into us that our privilege is not something that we basically achieve, but it's something that we're born with, and that we should use that, make good use of that rather than just, take it for granted. Um, I remember well, we went back with the whole family 25 years ago, and about 25 years ago, realizing at that time that I was actually about, the same age as my parents went out there, same stage of my career, where, I just started my training in radiology, and then realizing that that was what they did, just them, in that hospital, and how really brave they were in doing that. But again, it really also showed me, also still at that time, only one doctor in that tiny village, a day's drive away from the nearest town, and there's so much still to be done. And again, something that we as a community, I suppose, should try to strive for, that we can bring access to also remote locations like this at some point. Especially, and also if we look at our own wealthy countries, there are still a lot of disparities in health and health outcomes that we should address. We moved back when I was two, and this is me at the wheel of a very, very big ship, very sustainable, not flying. It took forever because the Suez Canal was closed, so it took 6 weeks to go all around the Cape and get back to the Netherlands. And well, maybe this is indicative of how I'd like to be in charge sometimes. And we arrived in the Netherlands in Amsterdam, then moved to other places in the Netherlands as well, and eventually ended up again in the south of the Netherlands, in a little village, hamlet really, called Liebig. This is where I spent most of my childhood. And this part of the Netherlands, that's basically wedged in between Belgium and Germany, is not the Netherlands that you might have in mind. There are no canals, there are no windmills, there are hills, lots of hills. I cycled up them, mostly up, as far as I remember. And the local dialect is a mixture of, Dutch, French, and German, depending where you are, west or east. The boundaries there are also a little bit blurry in that, I went to school in the Netherlands, but we went to the baker in Belgium that was open on Sunday morning, and the petrol was really cheap in Germany, so it still is. So my parents still live there, and they still drive to Germany to get the petrol there. So yeah, it's a very mixed sort of area, and this is Rotterdam, by the way, where I now mostly live. Um, the south of the Netherlands is also not too far from Paris. It's a bit of a diversion digression, but this is Foucault's pendulum in the Pantheon in Paris, and I'm really proud of this picture. I took it myself. This was when I was taking a photography course and showing motion in a photograph and keeping sort of the object as moving still. I've got 1,000 other pictures that didn't work out, but this one did. And what I want to illustrate here is, well, the decision making I had when I was 17, 18, whether to go, where to go to university, what kind of degree to do. Medicine was obvious because I'd grown up basically in a hospital. Even when we were at home, life revolved around the hospital. But I also really like maths and physics, and primarily because it was so easy that in school, that I didn't have to do much work for it. So I was really torn between the two subjects. Radiology obviously was a very obvious choice, but I'd never heard of radiology before, so that didn't really come to mind. In the end, like a proper teenager, I did not really make a decision. I just registered for medicine and physics, and let fate decide. Medicine at that point was a total lottery in the Netherlands to give everybody equal opportunity to, well, chance to get in. I'd never ever then, before then, or ever since won something by chance, except this. I got my lottery ticket into medicine, so medicine it was going to be. And that's what I want to do. For 4 years is the theoretical part in the Netherlands, and then you have 2 years of clinical rotations. So after those 4 years, I wasn't too sure anymore about my choice in medicine. And then, well, you'd think, okay, maybe go to physics then, but that's not what I chose to do. I took a year out to study arts and sciences, and the meaning of this picture will become clear in a minute. So I did a year of philosophy, of history, cultural sciences. I absolutely loved it. Lots of reading, lots of writing, arts, etc. and even led to my first publication, which is now almost 30 years old. And it's not on radiology, it's on the saga of Tristan and Isolde, a Jungian interpretation of this tragic love story. I mean, for those who don't know, it's like a Romeo and Juliet. They don't really get to be together until after death, basically. But the Jungian interpretation is that, we have an unresolved issue in our collective unconsciousness that basically means, I mean, explains why this is a theme that keeps coming up and why this saga is being retold so many times. It was very interesting. There are many texts and poems that relate this saga, full of symbolism. So once you've done such an analysis of these symbols, you can never ever watch a love or rom-com film ever again. You will interpret it according to, whatever's wrong with our psyche. But yeah, it was really it was really interesting and a nice insight into how you can explain why these powerful stories keep, repeating themselves in history. It was fantastic. I had a great year. I also really missed the exact sciences, so I went back into medicine. Not that that's that exact, but more exact than this. Um, yes, now it is time for the story of the cow and the paperclip. Um, I'll this is a cow. This is where my parents live. This is basically what they're looking out on, and where I grew up. And here's a paperclip. I've got the prop. And this is for the people who were, born later than me. So it's a story that got me into neuroradiology, not straight away, but eventually. So it's the mid-90s. I'm doing my neurology student rotation. There's this patient, young woman in her 30s, and she's got this rapidly progressive disease where she's, getting more and more confused. She starts drooling. She's got language deficits. She can't walk anymore. So we really, and I had absolutely no clue what was going on. And it was just horrifying to see, and we had no idea. So some people might already, the neuroradiologists might already have a clue where this is going. I had no idea. I don't think my supervisors had any idea. So, but this was out of our hands. We just didn't know what was happening. Until early morning, the case presentation with the radiologist, that was, we still had that every day in the morning. The radiologist, I didn't know what radiologists did or what they didn't even know they were doctors. But there was our professor of neuroradiology, and the way this was presented, so this was before PACS, long before PACS. So MRI scans were printed on film, these tiny little slices, and there was an overhead projector, so it was put on the overhead for people who know what that is. And then he used a paper clip, so this is why I bought the prop, and so to bend out, so older people might know this, and you use this as a pointer, so you use this to point at the abnormalities on the scan. So it's a paper clip. And he pointed out all of these tiny structures in the brain, deep in the brain, with subtle abnormalities, symmetrical. So who knew that that was abnormal? And said, with all the confidence in the world, so this patient has Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, also known as mad cow's disease, or at least one of the variants. This was the mid-90s. It was all over the papers. We were all, we had the meat ban from, that was really illegal to then bring meat into the country. And I was just, it was magic, the fact that this guy who lives in a basement in the dark, comes up and just is able to make that diagnosis and solve that puzzle, to me was like, oh, this is really interesting. So I did talk to him and got a research project with him so that I, could explore this subject a bit further. Anyway, this is him, Professor Wilmink, Jan Wilmink, and his wife, Jelleke Wilmink. This is many years later. This was 2017, a fairly recent photo when he got awarded the ESNR honorary membership. Unfortunately, both of them have now since passed away. He really was the true reason that I got into neuroradiology. And he even offered me a job when I graduated, and I declined. Because one, I had my mindset on becoming a neurologist and not a radiologist. He said, well, I was a neurologist first as well. So, and then I became a radiologist. So you'll change your mind. And and second, he spoke phenomenal English, and he'd spent part of his childhood in South Africa. And I was just in awe. And also because I was super shy, and I definitely do not like speaking a foreign language. So I was like, I need to fix this first. Um, oh, uh, this was particularly problematic a few years before this whole I do not want to speak a foreign language, when a friend of mine had decided that we should go to Canada on a student observership, and I was all in. But then, of course, this was the days before internet and before email. Well, there was internet, but we didn't use it. There was no email, so we couldn't just send off an email. We had to ring this person, this student office, in English, obviously. And we sat there, the two of us, by the phone, and I was like, oh, no, no, I can't do it. And she's like, oh, I can't do it either. So we drew straws. And like I said, I've never, ever won anything by chance except for that medicine lottery ticket. So, of course, I drew the short straw. And yeah, so I had to ring up this student office. I stumbled my way through that conversation. I don't think I've ever been that nervous in my life ever again. We did get in, so we did have, and this is the gratuitous picture from very, very, very long time ago. But you can see that glasses change, become popular again. And yeah, we did get through, but I really thought, okay, I have to fix this issue with my language. So I decided I have to learn to speak English, dream it like a native. So I was really certain I wanted to go to the UK. They were recruiting actively for junior doctors at that time. So speak English like a native. So I went to Warsaw. So for those who don't know where that is, that's near Birmingham. Apparently the accent that I picked up there lingered for many years, especially after an alcoholic beverage. But it was a great time. I worked all hours. That was really, really awful, but also really, really great. I learned so much, also English, and friendships for life, etc. So after a few years of doing that, not just in Warsaw but also other places in the UK, English speaking challenge unlocked. And yeah, with quite a bit of clinical experience at that time, it was finally time to go for my neurology subspecialization, which I got to start in Amsterdam. And it took me less than a year to realize that really it wasn't what I expected it to be, both Amsterdam, but mostly neurology, because all of that diagnostics, with the little hammer and the little pin, actually, was just to decide whether the patient needed an MRI, CT, or an EMG. And then the final diagnosis came, sorry, neurologists. The final diagnosis came, of course, from radiology. So, a decision made, I had to change. I rang Professor Wilmich first and said, you're right. He didn't say I told you so, just said, good. And then I also told my parents. And then I ended up in Rotterdam. Rotterdam, I'd never been there before. It looked a bit grim. It was a bit grim in those times. It has actually changed quite a bit. So this is a much more colorful picture of the campus of Erasmus MC, and this is, the more or less current situation. And I ended up completely by chance, so maybe I do win some stuff by chance after all, in the department of one of our visionaries in our field, Professor Gabriel Creston. And I think he is a living example of unlimited radiology. He works across all kinds of disciplines and has worked in many, many countries. He really is a true citizen of the world. And his view on subspecialization, where, this is his quote, was actually really very forward-looking at the time when I started my training in 2000, when we basically worked modality-based. You had MRI experts and CT experts, but not really the neuroradiologist or the whatever abdominal radiologist, etc. And that might sound a bit contradictory with the unlimited and going across boundaries, but I think actually if you subspecialize and go really deep into your field, you become such an expert yourself that you can talk to other experts, and if you acknowledge each other's expertise, you can actually, cross those boundaries together, and reach really well, high potential and have a lot of potential. So when I started, there were just two neuroradiologists, and this is the group of the neuro team now. This is neurodiagnostic and interventional neuroradiology last summer. And yeah, I want to take this opportunity. Big shout out to my very lovely colleagues in Rotterdam, again, who've been sending me messages all day to wish me luck, and are online now. So thank you for all of your support and work together, which of course I'm continuing to do as well. Just not full time anymore. Um, right. So going back to when I started my training as a radiologist, like I said, that was in 2000. So that was the time that functional MRI started to make its way into clinical practice. And again, this really, well, yeah, I thought that was magic, that you could just look into the brain without, injecting anything, no X-rays, and just looking at brain function, similar for TTI. And it was still very, very special, but I really, really, really wanted to learn to do this. And there was a group in Leuven with Professor Stefan Sunad, who actually took on Marie Curie fellows for this. So I applied for that. And with, again, I'm so grateful that I could stop my training for 9 months and go to Leuven and have this opportunity. Very unconventional to stop your training like that, but granted by Gabriel to do functional MRI there in Leuven. Not very far away, but still a very different experience. Working full time on the scanning, all hours. I did all of the scanning myself, was scanned a lot myself as well, as most people working with MRI probably still do. And then brought all of that back to Rotterdam to set up our own, well, very primitive fMRI environment at the time. So we built our own, screen, semi-transparent screen, and just had the projector outside the console room and just started doing our fMRI. I was still very, very junior, but having to then sit down with the neurosurgeons and deciding on whether they were going to do awake surgery or general anesthesia was it was really quite freaky when one day, after the second time I did this by myself, he said, "Oh yeah, I just went for general anesthesia. I trust your scan." So the patient's okay, but he was, thankfully. Yeah, so and I've really, I think this is really where also my love for MRI and advanced MRI really started, and having that hands-on experience, doing everything myself, the analysis. I still use SPM for those who know that. It's very, very ancient. And yeah, it's what got me into that international European community of MRI, well, researchers and some clinicians as well. Um, so well, so I continued my training, but I also needed a PhD, I had decided. So that's what the other thing I did, and this was my thesis, or is my thesis. Not on fMRI, because why would you go into the same subject? But no, I did my PhD on imaging in minor head injury, as you can see, and that was a medical decision making thesis, or PhD, called the CHIP study, CT in head injured patients. Peter designed the logo with a little chip out of the skull. And I collected data on over 3,000 patients in 4 centers in the Netherlands. It was really, there was no real neuroimaging research at the time, which is completely bizarre that it's now a thriving, neuroimaging research with many research lines. But at that time, there wasn't really anything. So I was, well, basically, this was the only option I had. And it was actually really great. I've never really considered medical decision making and cost effectiveness analysis, but actually, there's a lot of maths involved in modeling, etc. So that was really cool. I really liked it. And what's, a very small moment of fame is that if you now go to the App Store, uh, this is very old, right? But this still attracted this weekend. Medimath medical calculator. It's not my product. I have nothing to do with this. And then you download that, and there it is, the chip rule, because I made a decision rule. It actually then lets you sort of put in the patient's symptoms and characteristics, and you get a score and the probability of a positive CT. And it's all there. And this has, this chip rule has also been the basis for the national guidelines for CT in minor head injury as well. So yeah, that was well, that's nice to see when things actually make it to practice and even to the App Store. I don't get any money for it. This is me getting my thesis. So this was in 2008. As you can see, it's okay. It's a long time ago, but it's still this century. But the only woman on the committee is actually my PhD supervisor. Thankfully, things are changing a bit. And my PhD supervisor is Marion, and she is a radiologist and also an expert in medical decision making. And what she says, I think, is something that we tend to forget working in the medical field. But I think it's so true, and is so important, especially in all of the discussions around AI and how is AI going to go into, in our field, is that we are basically never really 100% certain of a diagnosis or of how specifically how a specific patient is going to respond to treatment. So all the time we're weighing this evidence, and I think that is what makes our profession so hard, but of course also so very, very interesting. And this really also means, and again, many other things as well, but that I really want to focus on the clinical challenges that we face with our imaging. Can we use especially advanced imaging, but also other imaging, to solve some of our clinical problems, and not just out of academic interest, but really also to improve our practice and lives of our patients. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but the big ones are that I started after the head injury, been there, done that, became a guideline. So I then moved to dementia research. And I mean, this is one of those examples where, okay, we have a little bit more now with especially CSF markers and PET, but still, it takes a long time to get a certain diagnosis. And even then, it's quite often not very certain what particular disease is underlying the patient's dementia or cognitive decline. So this is something I worked on for a while using advanced imaging, functional MRI, specifically with task-based fMRIs and resting state fMRI. That was very, very hard, and that was mostly aimed at distinguishing Alzheimer's disease from frontotemporal dementia, which we were our referral center for in Rotterdam. And these are young patients generally. These are patients that are in their 50s, 60s, behavioral problems, so very difficult to diagnose as well at that time. But yeah, the fMRI was also very difficult to do. But what I really, really loved using, and we still use, is arterial spin labeling. And this is where my love for arterial spin labeling came. I'm afraid that I've become a bit of the poster girl for ASL because I really, really do love the sequence, and the fact that we could use this again, non-invasive measure of getting a measure of perfusion, hyperperfusion, with patterns that are very similar to that what we see on PET. I think is really useful, and was particularly useful in this group of patients that are, with young onset, early onset dementia. And what ASL also brought me, or that love for ASL, was that I got more and more involved in the international perfusion groups with ESMRMB and ISMRM, and especially there was a European cost action led by Xavier Golay, where cost actions are really aimed at collaboration. So it's not money for, setting up research projects, which felt a bit weird. We're all researchers in the same room. It was like, what are we going to use this money for? But it's for building networks and for getting people together, and using that as a springboard for, projects and teaching and basically spreading these new techniques across, well, Europe mostly. So that really got me into that international community. And of course, again, I was still a very junior researcher at the time. So what I did was, join groups to do certain small projects or help out with a training course, etc., and work my way up basically. The other challenge, well, this is the one that I couldn't leave out, of course, Jeff Hinton's view on radiologists 10 years ago. So we can all snigger about how we're not quite extinct yet. You could also say, well, if we're already over the edge of the cliff, and we still haven't looked down, so if we don't look down, we don't know what's happening. And of course, because it hasn't happened yet, maybe that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. That's AI is going to take over our world, our work. But what we can say, of course, that it's got a huge impact on our work, which is something that I'm sure, all know. So that's when I started really quite intensely working with the Biomedical Imaging Group Rotterdam, which already started many years before on image analysis in general, and of course has moved over the years more and more towards, deep learning approaches, etc. And I now have many collaborations and a lot of students together with them to, again, work on, and I'll come back to that a little bit later, questions that we have in clinical practice. So I was actually on a panel in 2022 about neuroradiology, the future of AI in neuroradiology. So I talked about, making visible what remains invisible to the naked eye, etc., and making diagnosis that we could, can't make at the moment without AI. And what was the takeaway from this panel is that I would be the happiest person in the world if I don't ever have to measure a tumor again. Well, yeah, that's. I mean, I said many things. It's still true, though. It's just not. It's just not very exciting. And we're still actually working on this as well. Right, and then the challenge that I'm now working on is basically the molecular diagnosis of brain tumors and the new classifications that are coming. Since 2016, we've had 2022, and then another one is pending, how we are diagnosing and reclassifying brain tumors now with molecular parameters. And that really steers treatment. It really defines prognosis, or at least gives you an indication of prognosis. So it's really important that we get that right. And of course, this is all done on tissue. But getting tissue from a brain tumor, of course, is quite an invasive procedure. You need brain surgery. So my moonshot really is that we can use our imaging to basically virtually sample tissue at any location, at any moment in the brain along the entire disease course, so that we can have an indication of what is basically happening on a clinically relevant level. Of course, we're never going to be matching molecular biology, or at least I don't think so in the near future, but can we at least give information that is clinically relevant for decision making? Because at the moment, we go in blind, we know, well, not entirely blind, we know there's a lesion and we think that's a brain tumor, but we first need the tissue to make any other decision afterwards. And that goes for the patient, of course, as well. And it's it's very different if you're knowing that you still have 20 years to live and have, a surgery that you need to recover from versus, the 1 year median survival that is associated with the most malignant brain tumors. I also think that so we can't always take that tissue sample safely anyway. So there's some patients that we can't even know for sure, and they're quite often not even treated because we don't know what they have. And of course, along the disease course, we see that brain tumors, the primary brain tumors, they almost always recur. They probably are different at that time because otherwise treatment would still work, but we rarely take tissue samples or have tissue at that time. So we're basically then going blind as well. it would be faster. You know, my dream scenario is that the patient goes into the scanner and we have the algorithm in the scanner built in, and the patient comes out. There is already a, you know, a predicted diagnosis, and they can go and see their doctor and start that treatment versus now waiting for the surgery, waiting for the results, etc. Um, and finally, um, while I know that not every country has many MRI scanners or even has an MRI scanner, you know, molecular diagnostics is even a bridge further. So if we can do this, and preferably on the simplest MRI scanner possible, we can make this highly expert diagnostics available for everyone wherever they are in the world, and really contribute to you know, equitable healthcare, and again, sustainable healthcare. It would save us a lot of costs as well if we don't have to do all of the genome sequencing. Okay, so with all this in mind, so as Freya said, I became professor of neuroradiology in Rotterdam in 2018, and that was a slightly more pompous ceremony than than here. And this was the year that the politician Tessa Jowell died of a brain tumor only months after she gave a very impressive speech in the House of Lords. And this is her quote. So one of, well, a tiny quote out of that very long lecture. And she really called on us as doctors and health systems to follow the patient's example, to work together, and to support each other and to learn from each other. And I think if a message like that comes from somebody who's going through this devastating disease, we really have to go above and beyond to make sure that we do just that, that we work together, despite, of course, also the competitive environment we live in academia. So that's what I try to do. With my group, we make our data available publicly if possible. Same for the code. We really strive for an open and inclusive, collaborative environment in science, and make sure that our findings basically matter and that the data matter, that they keep mattering for the future. And another way of making such impact is, of course, through the leadership positions that Freya mentioned. So this is not because I love being on stage and having a microphone, although clearly I do love it. It's a good thing I can't sing. But this is when I was in the Congress president of ESNR and ESMRMB. And what I did at both conferences was I did fundraising for local charities so that we had also public engagement. I'm really proud that at ESNR I had equal gender distribution in the speakers, not moderators, speakers, and that underrepresented groups were a little bit less underrepresented, and people felt, well, that they were part of it. And again, I think this is something, this is not easy, you know, it doesn't come easy because of course you ask the people that you know for, you know, especially at the last minute, we think, oh, I still need a speaker for this session. So it takes a lot of, it is a lot of work, but I think that's our responsibility as leaders. But I think also, you know, as, you know, in any career stage to, well, to raise the question or to propose yourself and say, well, you know, I could give that talk and participate, you know, in committees so that you can actually make that change as well. And it doesn't, of course, only need to be inclusivity, any kind of impact that you can make. I One of the other things, as we heard, I was ESMRB president 2019, 2020. That was not an easy time because that was, of course, during the pandemic as well. So I had to decide on whether to go ahead with our conference in March 2020. But one of the things actually that came out of that made it actually a blessing in disguise is that I was able to give the Consortium for Advancement of MRI Education and Research in Africa a platform. So they became a working group of ESMRMB, and we were able, because we moved our conference to online only, to actually have a very big representation of African researchers in our conference as well. And you know, I do not want to take any credit for camera because that's all been Yudina and Azoda's work. But I was really pleased that as a president, I could say of course, you're welcome, and we can give you what you need to start your initiative. And thankfully, that has really expanded now, and that's really great to see. ESR, yes, somehow this picture came out purple of the House of European Radiology. That was in the dark, in the snow. But yes, I was on the Executive Council together with Mark, exactly the same, Mark Dewey, exactly the same time we switched chair positions, swapped over positions. And again, you know, what we can do there is a bit more overarching to give statements or write position papers about, you know, things that matter and make impact that way. So of course, the biggest impact we have on the people around us and with the people around us, because of course, you know, by helping, supporting, teaching, and again, mentoring, and this is things we could all do at any level of our career stage, we can make sure that our message gets brought across. So these are some pictures of the research group, and happy faces, because mostly this is because I've paid for dinner. But but really want to you know, acknowledge and my deepest gratitude to master students, PhD students, with all of their energy and bright ideas, and, you know, pushing those boundaries for me as well, and saying, well, you know, we really have to do this because that's how it's done these days. And of course, my many collaborators, again, I would need another 45 minutes, I think, to name everybody. But really, they are so invaluable, and big thanks to them in the department, and also in the Brain Tumor Center in Erasmus MC. And that's basically, they've brought me here, well, to this point in my career, but also, of course, to Cambridge. And that's what I also want here. I want to, you know, build those collaborations, help, you know, people wherever I can, support, mentor, and see what we can build here across our two institutions, across our countries, across our boundaries, across disciplines, to really have radiology unlimited. And yeah, I would say, don't hold yourself back. Don't be limited by your boundaries or you know, the discipline that you work in, but look across that border and see what you can do there to make the world a little bit better. And with that, thank you very much.